Everybody say read aloud, read aloud, say read aloud, read aloud, say R-E-A-D, aloud, R-E-A-D. Everybody say read aloud, say read aloud, say riggedy, riggedy, read aloud, riggedy, riggedy, read aloud. All right, tonight, guys, the book is called Thanksgiving at the Tappletons, written by Eileen Spinelli, illustrated by Megan Lloyd. Thanksgiving at the Tappletons was always a big day. Thanksgiving at the Tappletons meant, of course, the Tappleton family. Mr. Tappleton, Mrs. Tappleton, Jenny Tappleton, Kenny Tappleton, and Grandmother and Grandfather Tappleton, and Aunt Hedda and Uncle Fritz, but most certainly, of course, the turkey and the trimmings. It was still dark when Mrs. Tappleton lit the oven and took the big turkey out of the refrigerator. Just then, someone knocked at the kitchen door. It was Mike the milkman. "Good morning, Mrs. Tappleton. I thought you might like some eggnog." As Mrs. Tappleton reached for the eggnog, the turkey slipped from under her arm. Now, on a warmer day, this might not have been a problem, but this Thanksgiving day was quite cold, and the step was covered with ice. Before she or Mike could even think, the turkey had slithered into the yard. "Hurry!" screamed Mrs. Tappleton. "Stop that turkey!" The milkman chased the turkey. Mrs. Tappleton chased the milkman, and the turkey slid down the hill into the pond. Plop! Splash! It bubbled out of sight. What are these words called? Onomatopoeia. When Mr. Tappleton came down to breakfast, he took a long sniff. "I don't smell turkey," he said to his wife. "Of course you don't smell turkey," she replied. "You have a cold." "I don't have a cold," he insisted. Mr. Tappleton shook some pepper in the air. Her husband sneezed. "Achoo! See," she said, "you do have a cold." After breakfast, Mr. Tappleton put on his coat and scarf and hat and gloves. "I'm going to the bakery to buy our pies." "Wear your boots," she said. "I know for a fact it's quite slippery out today." Sim's bakery was so crowded, the line reached out onto the sidewalk. Mr. Tappleton had to wait in long lines, so he went to the diner for a cup of coffee. By the time he got back, the long line was gone, and so were the pies. Mr. Tappleton was afraid to go home with nothing. "2 boxes tied up with string, please," he said. Mrs. Sim stared at him. "You mean 2 empty boxes?" "That's right." "My, they feel light," remarked Mrs. Tappleton. "Certainly they're light," retorted Mr. Tappleton. "Mrs. Sims prides herself on how light her pies are." Mrs. Tappleton set the table. She called to her son. "Kenny, you make the salad. There's lettuce in the crisper and carrots and radishes, too." Kenny's mouth fell open. Just yesterday he had emptied the crisper and fed all the vegetables to the rabbits in Mr. Butterworth's class. How could he tell his mother? He couldn't, so he covered the empty salad bowl with aluminum foil and stuck it in the back of the refrigerator. When the others went to pick up the relatives at the train station, Jenny stayed back to mash the potatoes. Every year this is her job. This year, she thought, I'll make them even better. I'll use the mixer. Just as Jenny flicked on the switch, the phone rang. It was her best friend, Nora. Jenny loved to talk. Jenny talked and talked and talked to Nora, and she might still be talking today, had not a wet glump of something hit her on the back of the head. She turned to see what it was. Splat! Another flump hit her in the face. The mixer was going wild, and mashed potatoes were flying everywhere. Without even saying goodbye to Nora, Jenny hung up the phone, scrubbed her face, and wiped mashed potatoes from nearly everything in the kitchen. She just finished as the others came back. Uncle Fritz patted his stomach. "I'm hungry," he said. Grandfather Tappleton laughed. "I'm as hungry as an elephant." Everyone sat down at the table. It was a Tappleton tradition for Grandmother to say the Thanksgiving prayer. "As soon as the turkey is ready," she smiled. "I'm as hungry as 2 elephants," said Grandfather. Mr. Tappleton went to the oven. "I'll get the turkey now." He opened the oven door. "The turkey is gone!" Mr. Tapleton searched on the table and under the table and in every kitchen cabinet. He looked in the sink and in the broom closet. I can't find the turkey anywhere. Mr. Tapleton told them how their fine turkey had slipped out the door and down the steps and across the yard and down the street and plop, splash into the pond. So much for the turkey, said Uncle Fritz. Never mind, said Aunt Hedda good-naturedly. We'll fill up on trimmings. I'll get the salad, Jenny announced. Then Grandma can say the prayer. Jenny sat the bowl on the table and peeled off the aluminum foil. Everyone stared at the salad that was not there. I fed the rabbits at school, confessed Kenny. So much for the salad, said Uncle Fritz. I'm as hungry as 3 elephants, Grandfather sighed. Kenny jumped up. We'll have Jenny's mashed potatoes. He brought the pot from the kitchen and lifted the lid. I was on the phone, said Jenny meekly, and the mixture went wild. So much for the potatoes, said Uncle Fritz. I'm as hungry as 4 elephants, Grandfather declared. The pies, cried Mrs. Stapleton. I'll get the pies. Mrs. Stapleton brought in the boxes, set them down, and untied the string. You brought home 2 empty boxes? She glared at Mr. Stapleton, who covered his ears. 5 elephants, groaned Grandfather. The dining room was quiet. Everyone looked down at the empty table. Uncle Fritz muttered something, but it could not be heard above the rumble of his stomach. A tear rolled down Jenny's cheek. No Thanksgiving dinner, she sniffled. Nothing to say a prayer for, Kenny sighed. Grandmother smiled. Of course there's something. There's more to Thanksgiving than a turkey and trimmings. And then Grandfather Stapleton asked everyone to bow their heads and to hold hands around the dining room table. In this Thanksgiving prayer, she said, Turkeys come and turkeys go, and trimmings can be lost, we know. But we're together. That's what matters. Now what's served upon the platters? Not what's served upon the platters. Amen. That was a wonderful prayer, said Aunt Hedda. Mrs. Stapleton jumped up. We have liverwurst and cheese in the refrigerator. I'll fix the sandwiches, offered Mr. Stapleton. Jenny wiped her tear away. I'll get the pickles. Kenny laughed. I'll open up a jar of applesauce for dessert. And so the Stapletons had their Thanksgiving dinner after all. Uncle Fritz's stomach stopped rumbling, and Grandfather Stapleton ate enough to feed 6 elephants. In fact, everyone had plenty to eat. But most of all, they had each other. The end. That was Thanksgiving at the Tappletons. And I wonder if you guys noticed 2 of our vocabulary words. There were 2 vocabulary words in there, and I'm not going to tell you which ones, but if you read this book tonight, come tomorrow and whisper the 2 vocabulary words that we just studied these last 2 weeks, and you will pick from the book box. There were 2 vocabulary words in there. All right. Have a good night. Sleep tight.